Film can be defined using one word: change. Change is something that we have all experienced and will experience more as time goes on. It is something that can be good, bad, or honestly just confusing. But what does this have to do with film? Well, film changes a lot each decade and never really ends changing, as our opinions on specific points in film history change as we too change as people. And a decade of film that changed a lot, both during and after, were the 1930s. In this video, I hope to explain this and hopefully pique your interest into doing some of your own research on some of these films or events. You cannot talk about the 1930s without talking about the Great Depression. The Wall Street crash of 1929 occurred from late October 1929 to mid-November 1929. Black Thursday is most commonly considered the beginning of the Great Crash. Occurring on the morning of October 24, 1929, prices of stock were inflated to astronomical heights due to overbuying of stock. This devastated the American economy, and it wasn't soon after that the rest of the world would feel it, and in some countries considerably worse than the US. Unemployment and prices of everyday items would reach an all-time high in the 1930s and weren't showing any signs of stopping anytime soon. Prohibition, which was placed into effect as the 18th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution in 1920, forbidding the sale and consumption of alcohol in the U.S., also further weakened the economy. This would all obviously affect the film industry, making it a lot hard to produce and distribute films. Here's how the story went. The Depression had an almost immediate effect on the film industry, as costs of productions were already high in the late 1920s as talkies were invented and were starting to become mainstream. This, along with the Depression, caused many film companies to struggle. It didn't necessarily mean that companies immediately started applying for bankruptcy, but they definitely weren't in a preferable financial state. Some filmmakers also had ideas that were way out of the company's budget. Take Willis O'Brien, for example. O'Brien was a stop-motion animator that did the stop-motion work for films such as The Lost World, King Kong, and The Ghost of Slumber Mountain. In the early 1930s, O'Brien proposed an idea of a film called Creation. With the story similar to the likes of King Kong, O'Brien built stop-motion puppets and shot approximately 20 minutes of test footage. This cost RKO, the studio producing Creation, millions of dollars to produce, causing RKO to nearly go bankrupt. Now, Creation was a pretty decent-sized project for its time, so that is a factor, as even now, big-scale projects cost a lot of money, but usually film studios do not almost go bankrupt for producing a few minutes of test footage. Now, of course, King Kong was made soon after, which used a lot of the stop-motion puppets created for Creation, and even stole scenes from Creation, so Brian kind of got to see his ideas come to life. Some film companies were also pretty well off, such as Universal, who had no issue releasing their Monsters franchise with films such as Dracula, Frankenstein, and many more coming from the 1930s. Films were also starting to become more serious and delve into deeper topics. An excellent film of the 1930s is the original All Quiet on the Western Front, which depicts the lives of German soldiers during World War I. This was one of the first anti-war films, as war was previously often romantically viewed by those who hadn't experienced it. This kind of brings up my final point, ending the 1930s, that being, World War II helped end the Great Depression, especially in the United States, but devastated the world. But it really goes to show how bad the Depression really was, as it had to take the bloodiest war in history to resolve it. The 1940s would be one of the most pivotal decades in the history of film. Without it, cinema would be very different. Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon, and the continuation of the Universal Studios Monsters franchise were all made in the 1940s. However, the 1930s really showed the world, despite the war, how lucky we were to have it in the future.